I remember when I went downstairs, I ended up walking up to my babysitter and I saw she had her finger up her nose and then she ended up scratching her peach with it. Like, ew. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to a super embarrassing story. So this story takes place back in my grade 5 year. So I was in elementary school and I was just a basic kid, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I did not know any better than the average child. The only thing I cared about back when I was in grade 5 was tech decks, video games, and also probably Pokemon. I love Pokemon and to this day I still do. But one thing I will say is that one thing I hated was that I was a major introvert, meaning that I would never be able to really go out and talk to people. Hell, I was even nervous to go and buy a pizza one time. Like, I could not talk to anybody and I always felt like I was really awkward. Obviously, throughout middle school, I started learning how to not be, but especially in grade 5, honestly, I was just not good with interacting or basically confront someone in any way. But I remember one time I was walking home from my elementary school after my classes were done and I basically started heading home. When I finally got home, I saw my parents were looking at me, and one of my parents ended up walking up to me, which was my mother, and said, "Oh, Baba, so we're gonna be leaving for a couple days. We're gonna give you a babysitter, so do not worry, everything will be okay." "Where are you guys going?" "Oh, we're going to quickly go visit your auntie in the States, so you do your thing here. Don't worry, the babysitter will be here any minute, but we have to go now, okay? I left some grilled cheese sandwich for you at the kitchen." Okay, is what I said, and right away my parents ended up leaving. Obviously at first I was really nervous about being home alone, but at the same time, like, it didn't seem that much of a difference since I wouldn't interact with my parents anyway, even if they were home. So I remember I ended up just going straight up to my room and started playing video games. Obviously in grade 5 you don't really get any crazy homework, so you know, I just ended up sitting there, sitting on my Xbox, playing video games the entire time and pretending that everything was okay. Until out of nowhere, I remember the doorbell rang and I ended up hearing someone at my door. Now once again, I was a major introvert, like to the point where I was scared of everything. I was even afraid of my own shadow. So when I heard the doorbell rang, I remember I was super nervous to go basically answer the door, that I ended up going onto my balcony and looking down at my front door to see who it was. When I looked down, I saw that there was a girl in like a crop top. She was like a basic girl, and I remember I saw that there was already a stain on her shirt, and I'm not gonna lie to you, she looked disgusting. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember I basically ended up looking down and she looked up right away and saw me. She ended up saying, "Hi, you must be Bubba. Can you come get the door?" I mean, I can. "Okay, well, can you?" I remember at that moment, I felt like it was a really awkward situation. So I remember I ended up basically going off my balcony, sprinting straight to the front door, and I let her in. When I let her in, I remember she looks over at me and she started smiling at me. And when I saw her smile, I am not joking, she had the most yellow teeth ever. Like, her teeth were more yellow than Big Bird. Like, it was ultimately disgusting. And I remember I kept looking at her thinking, how in the world did my parents find this babysitter? I remember she ends up coming in and she ends up basically, like, you know, introducing herself and basically telling me how we're gonna have a great time and just, you know, the basic rundown of how the night's gonna go. Obviously for me, I ended up just, you know, ignoring her somewhat. Obviously this wasn't my first babysitter ever, but I will say that, you know, I just ended up just pretending I knew what she was saying, shaking my head, and I went straight back upstairs. When I went back upstairs, I remember I ended up going straight to my Xbox and I started playing Xbox again. But 5 minutes later, she ended up coming up to my room, and out of nowhere, even on the stairwell, I ended up hearing like a little fart sound, and I was like, wait a second, what was that? And then I ended up seeing my babysitter walk into the room and say, "Oh, hey, Bubba. So I was just wondering, I'm a little hungry. Are you hungry?" "No, my mom gave me food before I left." "Oh, okay. Well, I'm hungry. So is there anything for me to eat in the kitchen?" I mean, you can just help yourself," is what I said. And I remember she went straight downstairs and basically started doing her own thing. To be honest, I don't know what she did because I was upstairs playing Xbox, but I remember 20 minutes went by and I ended up basically getting actually hungry. I don't know why in grade 5 I would eat a lot. To be honest, I was a bit overweight back when I was in grade 5. But anyways, afterwards, I ended up going downstairs, and when I started to head downstairs, I turned the corner and instantly I ended up seeing that this babysitter was leaning back on a chair in the dining room table with her feet kicked up onto the table with her toes out, and she was eating crackers and ketchup together. Now listen, crackers and cheese, that makes sense, you know, cheese and crackers, that's fine, but ketchup and crackers? Like, are you joking, bro? That's disgusting. I remember at that moment I looked at her and I basically looked at her really weird, and she looked at me saying, "Oh, you must be hungry. Here, do you want a cracker and ketchup?" I'm good, thanks," is what I told her. And I remember I basically ended up walking away and went to the living room to watch TV. I remember after a while, I actually started starving even more and more, to the point where I ended up basically texting my parents that I was starving and that this babysitter cannot cook for the life of her. My parents ended up texting me, "Oh, Bubba, well, we left some cash for you upstairs under daddy's pillow. Go upstairs and get some money." So I remember I ended up sprinting upstairs, went downstairs, and I remember I basically ended up walking up to my babysitter saying, "I was just wondering, is it cool if we order a pizza? I'm not paying for a pizza." "Oh, no, it's okay. My mom gave me money to pay for it. is it cool if we order the pizza? Yeah, sure, just order it. I was hoping you would order it if that's okay. The reason I said this was because I was really nervous back then. I was really scared to basically call literally anyone. Yes, I had a phone, but it was only to call my parents. And to be fair, those were the only 2 numbers that were ever saved on my phone until obviously middle school. That's when I started pulling girls. But you know, I was just extremely nervous. I remember this girl ends up grabbing her phone and she ends up calling the pizza place, orders us a pizza, except this pizza was the most disgusting pizza ever. She ended up getting sardines on the pizza and then pineapples. And on top of that, she ended up getting olives on top of it. At that moment, I slammed my head up against the wall and I just knew like I was not going to eat that night and I was just really upset. So what I decided to do is basically go into my kitchen cabinet and I ended up grabbing a loaf of bread and I ate that for the rest of the night. I remember 40 minutes went by and I ended up hearing the doorbell ring, and obviously it was the pizza guy and I knew it was because I could smell the pizza coming from my window. And this babysitter ends up grabbing the pizza from the front door and calling me downstairs to eat the pizza with her. Now me, obviously I wasn't hungry anymore since I ate a loaf of bread, so I ended up going downstairs and I just sat with her basically. And I remember when this babysitter ended up opening up the pizza box, I am not joking, she ended up basically scratching her peach and literally was picking her nose, and then she went for the pizza slice. Like, bro, I didn't want to be anywhere near that pizza after I witnessed that. I was so disgusted, and I looked at her saying, are you not gonna wash your hands? Baba, why would I wash my hands? I'm a girl. I'm just naturally clean. At that moment, I realized that this girl had no sense of hygiene or anything. And me, I was just so grossed out to the point where I just didn't want to be anywhere near her. But let's just say things went from gross to ultimately disgusting, because what happens next, I gotta say, really freaks me out. I remember it was super late at night and it was around 10:30 at night. Now me, usually my bedtime was at 10 o'clock back when I was in grade 5. So I remember I went upstairs, I went to my room, and I basically started laying down getting ready for sleeping. But as I was laying down getting ready to sleep, I remember out of nowhere my babysitter ends up walking into my room. She walks into my room and looks at me and says, oh Baba, I was just wondering, do you want like some company? I remember I looked at her really confused and I said, no, why? Is everything okay? No, it's just I can't really sleep by myself. At that moment, I was really confused because I'm like, wait, does this girl want to do the devil's tango with me? Like, what in the world's happening? And then one thing led to another. She ended up getting under my blanket with me and laying down beside me and passing out. At that moment, I was super annoyed because not only did this girl stink of anchovies, but she was just super disgusting. And I just couldn't sleep and I just felt like really weird. And also, what kind of babysitter does this? I remember after a while, like 20 minutes went by and me, I was still wide awake. She was passed out dead and I'm just laying there thinking this could not get any worse. But guess what? It ended up getting way worse because out of nowhere, I ended up looking to the side and I saw she ended up moving her like peach a little bit and she ended up releasing the loudest fart sound ever in my bed under the blanket. At that moment, I remember when she moved the blanket a bit around after that crazy fart, I ended up basically getting a whole whiff of what was coming out of under my blanket. And I'm not joking, my eyes started to water. I was so grossed out. And I remember I really just wanted to get out of there. So I ended up getting up and I actually ended up sleeping on my living room couch just because I could not breathe in my room anymore. I remember the next morning came by and I remember she ended up walking up to me on the couch and she asked me, Baba, why'd you pass out on the couch? Is everything okay? I looked at her and I just kind of rolled my eyes at her and I went upstairs to brush my teeth. But as for this babysitter, well, one thing I was right about, she did not brush her teeth. And I remember she ended up basically sitting on my couch and basically was ultimately disgusting. I will say though, when my parents finally got home, things were a lot better because obviously she ended up leaving. I told my parents, never ever get that disgusting babysitter again. They looked at me confused, but I knew what I was talking about. Honestly, if you guys don't want a babysitter like this, then just fall for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.